Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is enlist. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we can use this verb. The first way you might hear enlist used is to mean to enroll or be enrolled in the armed services. So this is where someone decides they want to join. So the government is not forcing someone to be part of the armed services or part of the military. They are voluntarily doing it. A second way you might hear enlist used is to mean to engage a person to get their help or support. In fact, you will oftentimes see words like help or support after this verb. Right? So someone might say, I'm going to enlist your help or your assistance, something of that nature. And really, what that means is they want you to participate, they want you to contribute to some sort of project or effort. You should know that the verb enlist is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, all you need to do is add ing to form enlisting. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by adding ed. Our base verb enlist ends in a T sound. So our past tense ending is going to make an id sound. We're going to add an extra syllable as we make this past tense and participle form. It should sound like this: enlisted, enlisted. Now, there is one phrasal verb that I think you might hear, and again, it's enlist in. And again, it frequently means that someone is voluntarily signing up or joining to be part of something or some activity. Again, it's most commonly heard to refer to someone joining or voluntarily deciding to contribute to armed forces or the military. So, an example of this might be, did she enlist in the army? Right? So we have a specific branch of service here. Now, I've chosen this verb enlist because of the ongoing conflict in the Ukraine. There are many Ukrainians who've decided to join as part of the military. You're going to see that in some of my example sentences today. And today, as we practice our verb of the day, I'm going to focus on the simple present and the present perfect. So let's start with the simple present and a little review. We use this verb tense to talk about habits and routines. Now, with this particular verb, I wouldn't say this lends itself to habits and routines very easily, but it does work well with facts. And so that's what you're going to see in some of the examples here. The thing to pay attention to in the affirmative is what our subject is. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, then we're just going to use the base verb in the simple present. But if our subject is he, she, or it, we need to add an S to the end of the verb. There might be some other spelling changes, but with this particular verb, it would just be adding an S. Let's take a look at an affirmative example. On average, about 150,000 Americans enlist in the military each year. Okay, this would be a factual statement. It's approximate. Okay. Now, if I want to make a negative simple present sentence, again, I need to pay attention to my subject. My subject is I, you, we, or they. I'm going to use do, not, and then the base verb. If my subject, though, is he, she, or it, I'm going to use does not and then the base verb. Now, with both of these, you might hear the contraction don't or doesn't. You can see that in my example here. Registering with the selective service doesn't enlist someone in the military. So there's a requirement for men once they turn 18 here in the United States that they register with the selective service. Now, this does not mean that someone has joined the military. This information is collected in case there would kind of be an emergency and we need more military members. Lastly, let's look at making a yes or no question. In the simple present, to do this, we're going to start with do or does, whichever form matches our subject. The subject comes next. And then after that, you're going to have the base verb. You can see that in do women enlist in the military? And the answer to that question would be absolutely yes, they do. Okay. Now let's take a look at the present perfect. We use this verb tense to talk about something that happened in the past at an unknown time, or an action that started in the past and that continues into the present. To make the present perfect, I need two parts. I need a present form of have, so that's going to be have or has, depends on our subject, and then we're going to use that participle form of the verb. And since enlist is a regular verb, our participle is the same as the past tense. You can see that in my first example here. Thousands of Ukrainian civilians have enlisted as volunteer soldiers, right? So people have started volunteering, right? And they continue to volunteer. Now, if I want to make a negative present perfect sentence, what I'm going to do is, again, pay attention to my subject. Okay, and if my subject is I, you, we, or they, I'll use have. If my subject is he, she, or it, I'll use has. Then I'm going to use not, and then the participle form of the verb. Here's another example. He hasn't enlisted yet, but he's thinking about a career with the Marine Corps. Okay, so here we're describing an action that has not happened up until this point of time, and the rest of the sentence tells us that someone is considering volunteering. Lastly, we can make yes or no questions in the present perfect. To do this, we start with have or has, then we have our subject, and then the participle form the verb. You can see that in this example. Have both Russia and Ukraine enlisted the help of foreign fighters during this war? Okay. Now, this sentence, because it's mentioning this conflict, you might be thinking, oh, this is connected to that first definition, but it's actually connected to the second definition. So, getting others to help or support you. So, this question we can actually answer and say yes. Both Russia and the Ukraine have sought out help from people from other countries to join them in their fight. Now, let's spend a moment looking at some words that are related to our verb enlist. The first word we're going to look at is the noun enlistment. This is the action of enrolling or being enrolled in the armed services. An example of this might be nearly 300 high school students took the oath of enlistment at a special event. Right? So here we're describing a special sort of ceremony, it sounds like, where 300 people officially enrolled or began that process of enrolling into the military. A second way we can use the noun enlistment is to refer to the engagement of a person to provide some sort of help or support. So this second noun definition really ties back to the first definition of the second definition of the verb we looked at earlier. Here's an example of that meaning in a sentence. The enlistment of nearly 100 volunteers made the event a success. So here someone is saying, because we asked 100 people to help us, this event turned out great. It was a success. Another related word you might hear is the noun enlistee. This is a person who voluntarily joins the military, who signs up to serve. Here is an example of this noun in a sentence. Cathay Williams was the first documented Black female enlistee in the U.S. military. So this sentence is a true one. It's very interesting. I will try and remember to put a link so that you can check out a video about this person. This woman was born an enslaved person. fought as part and I should say, supported the Union Army during the Civil War, and after the Civil War decided that she wanted to continue to serve, but women weren't allowed to serve in the military, so she pretended to be a man. She kind of inverted her name. She said her name was William Cathay, and signed up to serve. And you can learn a lot more kind of interesting things about her and the challenges she faced being a Black woman at that time in the United States. But I hope today's video helps you better understand the verb enlist. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day.